is still adequate and meeting the standard that the traffic study said it could meet, but only if there's nothing in the way. And so it's just verifying they didn't put anything in the way during the construction process. So that's staff's report. Are there any questions?
The applicant would like to step forward and please state your name and address.
Dan Murphy, I'm General Manager with Canby Utility. I reside at 1751 North Laurelwood Loop here in Canby. And Vice Chairman Boatwright, on behalf of the Canby Utilities Board, thank you for hearing us tonight and considering your approval of our project at 3rd and Pine. This project actually got its birth back in 2009 when we had a possible development of the city block where we're located now. And so we've identified a couple of sites and hired McKinsey Architects to do a feasibility study of those sites, one of them being the property at 3rd and Pine. And that resulted in our purchase in January of 2010 of this site to accommodate the development, which, as we know, did not come to fruition at that time. But we also realized that eventually we would outgrow our facilities where we are now. So indeed, we're very excited about the possibility of building our new combined service center here at this location. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our McKinsey team who's here tonight that can answer all the questions that you might have regarding the project. Brian Vericoni, our land use planner, is here. And Adam Olson, our project architect with McKinsey, is here tonight. So I will yield the balance of my time to them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. My name is Adam Olson. Address is 1515 Southeast Water Avenue in Portland. And I've been the project manager on the project, and I've been working with Dan since we started back up and ramping the project back up of March of last year. And Brian, did you have the?
Yeah, we're still trying to find it.
Well, that's okay. If you want to just go back to the overall site plan, that would work for me. I was just going to touch on a few kind of high-level design items.
We're trying to find yours.
That's okay. I guess there's not a whole lot to add. I know that Brian touched on the potential phasing of the project we're working through. As we're working through construction documents right now, we're going to see where pricing comes in when it hits the street for bidding purposes. But the idea is that it will be phased, just a matter of exactly how we want to phase it once we get pricing back from the general contractors and such. I think the overall theme on the site is that it's sort of in this in-between zone between, we've got residences on the south and the east side of the site. We've got industrial on, I apologize, on the west side and the south are residences, and on the east side are more industrial zone, and then we've got a commercial zone to the north. And the idea was that we were taking themes from all those different adjacencies, and thank you, Brian, that's good. And kind of incorporating those into our site. I mean, all these buildings being single-story, pulling themes from the neighborhood. To the north, we've got that commercial building, that Hawksoft that was mentioned earlier. And there's an image there on the top left, pulling some of the materials from the neighborhood, some of the scaled elements, some of the metal building industrial type uses that are nearby. Maybe go to the next slide there. And this just looking at some of the precedent images as we were working through the design process of, using some corrugated metal, just because the use kind of lends itself to that material, and using other durable materials such as concrete masonry. Maybe go into the next slide, please. And this is kind of the main, I wanted just to point this out. It's kind of been the main shot when you're coming in to the driveway off of Southeast 3rd. The entry being immediately apparent to the building there straight ahead, and then off to the right hand side, that mass with the showing the corrugated metal on it is the main boardroom and the community room for use by the community, and then the left side of it being more of the area that's mainly functioning to house the existing downtown office that exists on First Avenue. And then the south end of the building is when the operations folks end up coming to the site, they would reside at kind of the south end of the south half of the building. And then what's not pictured here off to the kind of the left that you would see also upon entrance to the driveway is the monument sign that Brian touched on earlier. But a very transparent building. The idea is that we want it to feel inviting and be the same scale of the neighborhood and fit in with lots of plantings surrounding the site. Next slide. And this building, along with the other two buildings on site, being very similar in scale, they all have a similar roof profile that's just a single story. And we have a fence coming out from the building that is separating the public and the employee areas and helping to secure the site, the yard. Next slide, please. And this is a view from Pine and from the kind of residential side, and wanting to have a big, these are like the water quality features that are at the northwest corner of the site. And the idea here is that we've got these really deep landscaped areas that help separate the residences from the site, and some of the big truck and fleet that are parked beyond that. But the idea is that this building that you're seeing in the foreground is Building C. It's parking for the fleet. And then beyond is an entirely enclosed building, which houses the warehouse, the paint shop, the metal shop, and we're pushing those further back on the site. But the idea was that it was pretty transparent for security purposes. They didn't want, to put an opaque building right up against the property line near the residences and then leave this sort of hidden area back behind. The idea is that we're going to keep the site open and hopefully keep it secure and transparent, just so that there isn't any. I think I'll turn it over to our planner, Brian, if you wanted to fill in any gaps that maybe I missed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, the name's Brian Barricchione. Yes, I'm also at Mackenzie, 1515 Southeast Water Avenue in Portland. Adam and I work together there. Vice Chair Boatwright, you mentioned very early in the meeting about what a talented staff you have, and I wanted to echo that statement. Brian and his team have been a pleasure to work with. We work in a lot of jurisdictions, and they give varying levels of engagement as you lead up to a development, and Brian and his team have been top-notch in answering our questions and giving us feedback and guidance, so that's been very useful. And as Brian noted, that's right up through today. We had a bit of a scramble because the transportation consultants that the city uses had some questions late in the process, but we were able to respond to those, and I think we've got that all ironed out, fortunately. With respect to the sort of the bonus conditions of approval that weren't in the staff report, Brian showed 3 of them on screen tonight, and we don't have any objection to those. The fourth one, with respect to ODOT, I think I'd want to find out a little bit more about the specific wording on that. So, since this site isn't on a state highway, ODOT doesn't actually have any permitting authority. They have, they weigh in, they want to know, and they comment on this, and we mistakenly assumed that the city's transportation consultants would route it to ODOT, but it doesn't sound like that has happened. So we'll share it with them directly. But we just want to make sure that the language on that condition doesn't place the Campbell Utility Board in a bind if ODOT raises an issue that the Planning Commission hasn't had time to hear about or put in writing yourselves without first evaluating it. So If the condition could be worded in such a way that we cooperate with ODOT and we get their input and we respond to that with the city, that would be preferable to something that's binding, that hinges the issuance of a building permit on satisfying everything that ODOT may desire, even if it's potentially beyond their authority to request. Occasionally, they ask for a little bit more than they should. And so it's nice when those comments first come to the city staff and then go to the planning commission, because you can weigh that and figure out, if maybe they're asking for a little too much. So that would be the only request on the conditions. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a couple. Brian, you stated earlier, I believe, that ODOT has overview or oversight if the area is in a quarter mile, as in 99E. Does this fall within that quarter mile?
I've seen in written documents from them that they send out that claims that they have permitting authority within a quarter mile of the state highway. I totally understand the applicant's concerns, because ODOT is known to overreach at times their authority, and exactly what their authority is, I'm not the one to ask. But that's what we have done in the past, is always circulate traffic studies through ODOT and work with them to arrive at the satisfactory solutions that are recommended in those studies. And I haven't had any indication that they've shared the study with ODOT. If DKS had done the study, they would have been working with ODOT while the study was being completed. And so they've agreed to let ODOT review the study. That's appropriate. The question is if they make some sort of additional requirement. Unlikely, but you never know what they
With
might
the addition
come up
of
with.
trucks to that area, the only thing I could see is perhaps the turn lanes coming off 99E, as we had talked about on some other projects earlier, lengthening those turn
And
lanes.
there was some response just back today about one turn lane may not totally meet the length requirements or something, but it was at a intersection at a local street, therefore not required to mitigate. And so DKS said, hey, even though this standard that it's possible ODOT might have some concern about, there's no requirement, since it's a local street, for that to be fixed. But they might recommend that we do that. But most of the time, ODOT does just recommend things. And if cities often push back. But then there's points, at some point at which they have the ultimate authority. And whether this is one, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. So, I mean, they're the big gorilla in the room, and that's why everybody's a little bit worried about what they might recommend or come up with, because they always want the absolute best for the highway to keep it moving trucks, since it's a trade route. So I'm not quite sure how we would word this. We meet 3/4 of the need by having them review and comment. Whether we say that they have to follow any requirement that they make, I guess we could avoid that, and if ODOT insists on something from its review and they feel like they have the authority to enforce it, then so be it. We don't have to have the conditions say that, because they'll probably enforce it if they can and they want to anyway.
We put something on there that the commission will review the considerations or recommendations, should they?
You could do that. If something comes back that they're requiring that seems onerous in any way, we could word it so that it would come back here before the planning commission. That way you'd know about it, and it would elevate it to a higher level so that ODOT might not press, knowing that it's coming back for your review of whatever they're requesting. So that might be the best way to handle it.
Can you give us an idea how you'd word that, Derek?
Sure, are we ready to get to that point?
We're discussing it, I
Yeah.
mean. That
Well,
way they
Yeah, so I
have an
would
objection to it.
word it just like that. Commission acceptance of approval based on the staff's considerations and the 4 conditions, including the ODOT, that commission will review any considerations provided by ODOT, or considerations and recommendations provided by ODOT, should they arise in the ODOT review.
Yeah, I think that'd be okay. Maybe you could even word it such that, if they don't have any different recommendations than what DKS had, that it doesn't have to come back to you, but if they do differ, then...
Could we put something perhaps regarding arbitration between their proposal and the planning commission or city staff? If perhaps it's something that is objectionable to you folks.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way. They would only come back if we want... Basically, in adjudicating a matter.
Yeah, the ODOT commission will review any conditions recommended by ODOT that are different than what has already been recommended.
Condition 1 or 4?
You may just have all of these 4 conditions added towards the end of the findings that we currently have or something.
I have one other question regarding the residences on the across the street over there on the other side of Pine Street. Has there been any issues raised regarding the noise from the trucks on site, driving out, driving in? Is there any concern there?
We haven't had any direct discussions with them, but the site has been laid out as much as possible, as Adam mentioned, to push the industrial uses over to the east side, just to provide some separation, and there'll be a fairly healthy landscape buffer on the west edge. They were included. I'll back up. Beginning of January, we had a neighborhood meeting, and they were included on the notification for that. Not only the it's a manufactured home park, so not only the overall manager got a notice, but the individual unit owners got notice too. And at the neighborhood meeting, we had a rousing attendance of one person who was not from there. It was a contractor who wanted to know more about the project so that he could bid on it. So we didn't get a lot of pushback from the community, so we took that as a hopeful sign.
And it is an industrial zone site.
Yes. So that doesn't stop people from
Yes.
expressing.
Thank you. Any proponents other than the applicant? You guys are the only ones here, so I think that'll close public testimony.
Thank you.
Any discussion by the commission?
They've done good consideration of where they're trying to fit in between the residential and industrial in that area.
Nice. Do I have a motion then?
Vice Chair, I will motion to approve DR 1701 with the conditions presented by the staff to include the 4 new conditions, and the commission will need to review any recommendation from ODOT that would differ or contest of what was already presented to the commission today.
We have a second, so I'll put it to a vote. All in favor of DR 17-01? Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? DR 17-01 passes. We have, I guess, final decisions on these two. We have to put these to a vote too, Brian?
Yes, and it'd be best if you do those individually, and then on the first one, you might make note that we're going to delete that condition number 27.
Do I have a motion on SUB 17-01 Northwood Estates Phase 3 subdivision? Anybody?
Accept SUB 17-01, Northwood Estates Phase 3 subdivision, minus the item number 27 on the condition.
And its motion's been seconded. We'll take it to a vote now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the final decision on DR 17-01, Canby Utility Office and Operational Facility.
Brian, if we do this, do I have to reiterate that whole statement, or can I just say as approved by the commission?
Yeah, I think you can just say, as approved by condition, the commission, and that's going to include those 4 additional conditions.
So Vice Chair, I move to approve the final decision on DR 1701 based on the conditions of approval during the normal session hearing.
Do I have a second? Second. Motion's been approved. All in favor of DR 17-01, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's been approved. Any items of interest from the staff?
I might just mention that just before the meeting started, I was visiting with Commissioner Modern, that we've had a rather large pre-application that arrived last week. It involves a proposed annexation of, I don't think it will actually, the annexation won't consist of the entire area. We haven't figured out exactly how much they're going to annex immediately. But an annexation in this area that's on South Ivy, on the west side, south of Hope Village, over to Fir Street, and then beyond over to Elm Street, all the way down to the river, is 77 some acres and is required to be totally concept planned, like we did with the North Redwood plan. And in this case, the city's not leading the planning, a private developer is leading the planning and has developed a concept plan for the entire 77 acres and has submitted that for a pre-application for review and consideration so that they can make their annexation application that would include that plan for that entire 77 acres and annexation of a portion of that area that they have control over, that they want to propose a 65-lot subdivision in 2 phases. That's actually west of Fir Street over towards Elm, south of Hope Village. So that's a pretty big area to be considering for us, and so we've got our work cut out. And that
Going to
area
be
has...
R1 or mixed? or-
It's a mixed use of 3 different levels of residential zoning, so there's 3 types of housing proposed in the entire area. There's complicating factors in that most of the area currently isn't served by gravity sewer, so it's going to require the city to get on the ball very quickly and construct a new sanitary lift station to be able to accommodate, and that will be a critical factor in recommendation and approval of the annexation, is proof that we have that figured out and we know how to serve the entire area before we give approval for annexation of it.
Since it borders the Malala River, does it entail involving Oregon Fish and Wildlife or any other state agencies
Well,
environmentally?
It doesn't directly involve them, but there are some potential issues on maybe a conservation easement or such to protect the steep slope, because the urban growth boundary is at the top of bluff along the Malala River. And so part of the ownership of the property goes further outside the urban growth boundary. And so that part is, from our understanding, will remain county zoning that doesn't allow development. And only the portion of the ownership that's in the urban growth boundary will actually be developable and would be annexed. So it gets a little bit complicated on defining where that bluff is. So that's probably the most confusing aspect, and there's no real strong guidelines on how we do that. But just to keep you informed on what's keeping us busy.
Well, then our next planning commission will be Monday, March 13th.
Yes,
And is this what we'll be reviewing?
we list. yeah.
DR
So we have
17.
another apartment complex of 58 units on Territorial Road.
Any items or interest or guidance from the planning commission? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Oh, go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
Second, John?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
Where's that on Territorial?
Right next to the logging road trail on the west side.
On the west side?
There's a single-family home that's remaining, and it's building all around it.
You'll be approved, Tyler?
I don't know what the acreage is. I'd have to look it up. I didn't memorize how many acres it was.
John.